Just wait for a few to come on, then I'll bring in my guests and Damien. But I just wanted to start this. I've been going to a lot of protests. This is Hong Kong behind me. But when I was growing up, you can see lots of people, and like we've had hundreds of thousands, no-nos. But even though the big numbers mean a lot, something happened years ago with one protester who is anonymous that just showed true courage. And this is a homage to that person. And of course, Damien is the famous man with the tanks. And I'm going to bring in our guest today. I would question that I would have the balls for that man. Anyway, let's bring them in. This is Mary. Mary, grateful to have you here. And Grace, who is translating some of my pieces into Chinese. It's really exciting. Grace is from Taiwan, and Mary is from Beijing. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys.
It was interesting to see that extended footage, wasn't it? I can't normally just see a small amount of that footage, but to see the extension of when he gets up on the turret and has a chat with the pilot of the tank and stuff, yeah.
And then gets back and stops again. And then even his friends, the courage of his friends to come out, expose themselves and take him away. No one knows if he's alive or dead. No one.
Yeah, what happened to that man, ladies? Would we surmise what we think might have happened to that man? Or do we know?
No, no one knows.
Already died.
Mm-hmm. Do you know?
Yeah, it's a couple of years ago. I think it's 2 years ago. One of a show. The president in Taiwan. They was invited group of people. That time they was have a tent, a driver tent, and one of a captain was just going to Taiwan and tell them say they kill him. He already died. He died in that time. Yeah.
He died around the similar time frame as when he did that.
Yeah. It's confirmed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Our Prime Minister at the time, Bob Hawke, took a lot of people from China at that particular point in time. When
you weren't here, Mary, at that time, but we had a Prime Minister then called Bob Hawke, who was beloved. He was a beloved prime minister, very different from the current one. And he read out a speech about that. He was crying, and it was quite an amazing moment. He read out what happened, and yeah, I think, is that 1989 or what year was it?
Yeah, 1989.
Yeah, 1989. Yeah. Well, did you know about it growing up? Tiananmen Square and things like that?
Yeah. So I think I was born around then. So and from Beijing, I mean, when I look at that footage, I get very emotional because that place is very sacred. I think symbolizes nationalism or national identity to all Chinese people. So yeah, I think my parents said when I was young, I used to go out and play with the soldiers who had these long guns, right? And because I was so young, didn't know what they were doing. So it's probably like, you know, hanging out with the Victoria Police at Parliament House sort of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you wouldn't be playing cricket though in China, I imagine, but yeah, we played cricket.
Probably more like table tennis, but yeah.
yeah. The thing. There's so we the reason we got this show together is Damien put forth sort of a comment or a statement or a question about that he hadn't noticed many Chinese people in the protests, and that's sort of where it was. I myself had seen some of it from different from Japan and other countries like that, and it's hard to tell, to be honest. I know it's going to sound racist, but it can be hard to tell Koreans, Chinese, Hong Kong people apart until you talk to them. Same with us, you know. So it's very hard to tell a French from a German, from an English, from an Aussie until you talk to them. But then you approached us, Mary, about wanting to come on. Now, why did you do that?
Yeah, so firstly, I wanted to prove Damien wrong. No, just kidding. I just wanted to, provide another perspective because I have attended several protests, and in my personal experience, I have seen quite a lot of Asian protesters who may or may not be Chinese. It's a bit hard to tell without having a chat. So because for me, I was feeling super nervous about attending my first protest. And I think Grace and I will talk about why that is. So my radar was on because I was expecting to feel alone, right, in the protesters, thinking I would be the only Chinese or Asian person. But to my delight, I saw many. So I feel like we are quite well represented as a ethnicity in the freedom protests. So,
Mary, could I just ask why you would have thought it would be a problem if you were the only Asian or, in a minority there? Would you have felt threatened by that?
Yeah, I feel like I can only speak for myself, so I don't represent any other Chinese people. But I definitely have a worry that if I attend the protest, if I'm identified, that it could cause issues for myself or my family. And also, potentially because I do have a business, maybe that will have the prospect.
Okay, so the distinction there is it's not that you felt like you'd be out of, sync with everybody else because there's people of a different nationality or Australian nationality than you. It's because you're actually frightened of the CCP, because that's what happened. There was a guy going around getting us to sign a petition to stop the CCP's influence in Australia, and I signed it, and I'd signed it a few times. I'm probably signing my death warrant, But I said to him, in good faith, I said, look, how come there's not more Chinese? Because if I walk around Melbourne, it looks like a totally different picture. In some respects, I admit there is people there of Asian descent, but it's not the same as what I would get if I walked down Swanston Street. It just simply isn't. It's still a very strong Anglo-Celtic or white, a lot of Eastern Europeans maybe, and I'd say another diaspora that's not there is the Indian diaspora, but obviously not talking about that. And I asked him why, and he said something very similar to you. He said, well, people are scared, and he also said, no, there's spies here. There's spies here already have infiltrated the system. And I think it's a really important conversation. We're scared to have the conversation because I'm frightened I'll be painted as a racist just for simply bringing it up. But if we don't have the conversation, then we can never get to the bottom of the issues that confront us as a culture. So are we importing the CCP by having so many, people from China come to live in Australia?
Well, firstly, I think I just want to say that I'm not necessarily scared of the CCP. I think it's a culture, and it comes from a very deep-rooted history, like 5,000 years of Chinese history of being silent. So the CCP only sort of came to prominence in, like 1920s. So they're relatively new in the history of this whole nation. So I think it's a culture of not wanting to speak out and wanting to be silent rather than cause any issues. Especially, so protesting is like a very out there, action where you're really out on the streets with your face. So I'm not necessarily like anti-CCP or scared of them, but I definitely pro-freedom. And I think that's why I decided to attend, because I choose to be loud and proud with my voice rather than keep hiding, right? Because I care about Victoria and the freedoms we have here. So
you're concerned about the loss of freedom. Is the bill been a concern to you?
Definitely, and it's not just a bill, but over the last 18 months, the stuff you see, which once again, it's a commonplace in countries like China and other places, like a lot of censorship, especially media censorship. And, people who are outspoken arrested and things like that. That's started to really worry me. And the fact that these emergency powers will actually be made into official law, so people can be prosecuted, properly by the police and the justice system, was what really worried me. And like all of you guys, I feel like this is not the new normal, the normal that we had in Australia. And I've been here ever since 1998, so quite a while. I feel like the normal Australia we have is a land of freedom and choices and opportunity. And this bill does not represent any of that. And it essentially makes all the emergency rules, which are extreme, into the normal reality for every Australian, which I'm extremely worried about. So, yeah.
Can I tell you, Mary, I interviewed another Chinese woman about 2 months back, and she didn't want her face shown, and she didn't want her voice had to be disguised. So, and the audio didn't work, so I couldn't use it. And she told me exactly what you're saying now, but she said she was worried back when the cancel culture started happening, and she saw it as like they had the cultural revolution in China. Yeah. She saw the same thing. So she saw it happening there. It was a destruction of history. And she's been watching, and finally she approached me. I can't remember her name. I should get it back on. And she said it's escalating and following the path. So I do wonder, and I'll get Grace to talk on this in a sec, I do wonder if China is like, we're starting on totalitarianism. We're in primary school or kindergarten of where it is, like the meet and greet, come and meet your new masters, where China is with the CCP is further down the road,
Well, yeah, I think Grace is the best person to speak to this, but all I will share is my parents told me, because they grew up during the, the 60s, sort of when the Cultural Revolution happened. And they told me that before that revolution happened, the society in China was very similar to Australia. Like nobody locked their doors. Yeah, like you wouldn't lock your doors because there was like no crime. Everybody like trusted your neighbor. Like everybody was, friendly and kind to each other. And obviously that all changed after that period. So I would love to get
definitely one of the things that is changing here. Kindness, and we're getting people dogging each other. There's a level of cruelty lifting, which is horrible. Yeah, good point, Grace.
Yeah, I think we can talking about why the people was scared, as you mentioned about the cultural revolution. Cultural revolution, maybe I'm not in that time, when I even hasn't born yet. Maybe I already born, but I'm not quite that 10 years. I was speak to so many Chinese, they've been through the cultural revolution. Some of them, they don't want to talk about it. That is a trauma. That is a trauma for the Chinese people. So it's one you can imagine 10 million people die in that 10 years. And
extraordinary.
Wow.
yeah, and that time doesn't have any rule, no privacy, and they encourage people to spy each other, and your children can spy you, and your partner can spy you, and some that time is quite a lot of thing was they will label you and then send you through your labor camp. And
re-education camp,
and yeah, they just send all the intelligent people. They just thinking, oh no, you don't know how to. Yeah, it's kind of
Michael.
Yeah,
I'm out.
so we were like away to a rural area. Yeah.
Sorry, Grace. Sorry.
That's okay. I was listening to when I was that time. Is it like a kind of a people like become like you don't trust each other anymore? Like Mary said before the Cultural Revolution, people was very kind. And 1949, the Republic of China went to Taiwan. So that time, just only the few of them they cannot leave. So still stay in the China. And that time in Taiwan, we also I know the Taiwan we also face the same problem. We use the white terror. It's kind of spy each other. Your neighbor can spy you. Yeah. Your relative can spy you, and they can report to the
in Taiwan as well.
In Taiwan, yeah, that was one.
In Taiwan as well. Okay.
In 1947 until 1987, we have a 60 year under the authority, dominant authority in the Kuomintang, and so people was being spied, and they can use any other excuse. Is similar as a cultural revolution. They can give you a label you, and then they say you are communist, and then they immediately 2 days later you will be death sentence in some way, maybe in some of a river. You never ever say any word, and they can kill you. They can kill you whatever you want. But if you're not that
hard,
so
it's converted. It was different than what happened in China. It was the exact opposite.
It's but similar.
Okay.
Similar.
Yes, but the same. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Ideological, but from the other. Okay.
Yeah. Ideologically, but the different Chinese authority, they dominate in the two different places. They do a similar thing, so people are scared. You can imagine the people in an Asian country, they very very scared to speak. You can it's in our blood, in our roots, already 1,000 years. You can imagine in 3,000 years ago, Confucius. I really thinking Confucius is a foreigner. Why he introduced this kind of a philosophy into a Chinese culture? I really it's just like ask us to loyal, obey.
Is that Confucius? You're talking about Confucianism?
Yes.
Can I show you something? So this is Australia, right? This is Melbourne. Yeah. And I just want to show you the similarities between two cultures. So this is Melbourne when not the last march, the march before, when people feel that their freedoms have to be defended. So that's them.
Yep.
This is Hong Kong when let's see if it comes up.
I can't see anything from my end. Sorry.
It's just a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's just two big similar crowds. So obviously the people rise up. People everywhere. We interviewed a Czechoslovakian priest the other day, and he grew up in it too. People yearn and struggle for freedom, but there is definitely a load of fear. Because Grace, you were telling me you were trying to get some other people to come on from Hong Kong, and they wouldn't come on. Can you tell me what they said to you?
They worry about their family in Hong Kong will be arrested because of national security law.
And can you explain the national security law for those that
This
don't
national
know?
security law is one of last year, 2020, on
And that's what
May
these
1st.
protesters were
Yep.
protesting against. Yep.
After protest 2019, because somebody was burning the China flag, and the Chinese government wasn't very happy with that. So they implant this kind of bill, and they say if you destroy or anything, say anything about the CCP, even though you in a overseas somewhere, we still can arrest you and bring you back.
And that's not just Hong Kong, is it? That's anywhere.
And it's anyway, just on this, you like, if I destroy a CPP, and then today I take a plane, like a Pacific, Pacific or the Chinese any aircraft, they can arrest me.
Because communism is international in its understanding of itself, but this has a national element as well. So if there's national Chinese, it also wasn't there a huge sort of like fracas between pro-CCP forces, Chinese, and then anti-Chinese in Melbourne around that time at the front of the library in 2019?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I saw Rebel News. Yeah.
Okay.
That's their last chance. They say, I meet a couple of Hong Kong people. I was meet them. They say this their last chance can say anything because they know the army already come. They know their friend already died, and lots of people I meet, they are the student, so they have to leave. And some of them they left, they have to cutting down the older relative. Like I'm not your son or anything. They have to proclaim, otherwise their family will be arrested. That's it's quite a lot of sad story. So that's why the people was so fear.
So what chances do we have now in Victoria? We've got a premier who's clearly enamored with the Chinese system. He spends a lot of time there. He seems to be importing that sort of totalitarian instincts into Australia. What chance do we have to stand up to this? China's economically quite huge, massive population. What do you girls think we can do from this position?
Well, personally, I feel like Australia is in a great position because the roots that Grace was talking about is very different compared to the thousands of years of indoctrination in China and in Asia. I feel like from what I've learned of Aussie history, there is a spirit of being a maverick and larrikin, and that free spirit within all of us. And I definitely feel like currently there's this, it's a spiritual awakening all over the world, but especially here in Australia. So I think, well, definitely why I came on tonight is to remind people that, this freedom of speech and the freedom to protest politically is not available to everybody in other countries. And this is, we assume this is an automatic given right and freedom, as we should. And this is, unfortunately, this is that time. It's like a interesting turning point in the history of this world that, we really need to use that right. And yes, I've been silent all this time until November when I attended my first protest, because I thought this is the time to start speaking out and showing your position. So I guess hopefully if this inspires somebody who's sitting at home, and I actually do know quite a lot of friends who are Asian and non-Asian who are pro-freedom, but they just have not attended protests and they have not done anything publicly, for their own personal reasons.
And what do they say to you about your stand? What do they say to you, your friends? But either of you can talk to this, obviously.
So a lot of them discourage me from speaking out. Out of concern for myself and I guess my welfare, which is fair enough.
Do they quantify those concerns just out of interest? Do they say these are what you should be concerned of?
Yeah, I mean, especially my parents, they definitely don't want anything because I definitely still have extended family back in China, mainland China. So I definitely don't want any bad stuff to come to them. But at the same time, so once again, I think I'm personally torn between that, filial piety, which is what Confucius taught, that you are, essentially you pledge your allegiance to your family. But then at the same time, growing up in Australia, I embrace my individuality and my own voice. So it's an interesting balance. But
it's
I
hard
feel
though,
like,
isn't it? Because if you comply with it, then you're gone anyway. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So it's almost like is that thing of, better to die on your feet than to live on your knees.
Well, that's right. And I think that's the narrative that's being used. What Confucius taught is a person who is filial to their family, who is loyal to their family, is more likely to comply with the state, right? So the narrative with this whole movement is, do it for your community, protect people, keep others safe by doing all of these measures.
Yes.
And don't worry about your own choice, because that's not very important.
The collective will.
Yeah. That is, Mary, that is beautiful to say that. It's beautiful to hear that, because that's the truth. That's how they're using it. I just got to hear Danuta from Poland saying that they have been fighting for our freedom since the 18th century. It's still ongoing in one form or the other. Now, we have communism in China, but we have, I think you brought it up. Oh, no, this Vietnamese young man I was speaking to, he said so few Asian communities, countries are actually free. They're controlled in one way or another. And so they don't always know it until they're here, or maybe their kids grow up here. So, and that's around the world. You know what I mean? Like when I was growing up, you'd have people who escaped from the USSR, knowing full well that their family back in the USSR would lose their jobs. They'd end up cleaning the streets, or, they would be punished for the one that escaped. And yet you'd wonder if the family in the USSR would go, I don't care, I can do that, get to freedom, because people yearn for it. You think so? That's when you come back to that man with the tank. The most amazing moment in that video is when he goes, like, go away. It's very early on. And he's like, get out of here. And obviously this one man has had enough. I'm not scared anymore. Get out of here. It's just this one sweep and that was the danger to the CCP, not all the thousands in the thing, but that this one man will stand up. The courage that took is extraordinary.
He's remembered to history, but his friends are potentially still alive. So it's there's
pictures of him, but that to me is the human spirit wanting to be free. All these tanks, and even the people in the tanks going, get out of here. Get out of here. It's
not too late.
Yeah. So and it shows me that people are the same everywhere. That's what I really believe. Different coverings and different cultural upbringings and taught different things.
But you could look at that both ways, couldn't you, Michael? Because you said we're the same everywhere, and that ideological death, the machine that was going to kill him ideologically is the same machine we've got here now, which is potentially going to ideologically overrun the top of us, which we would have thought never possible in Australia. Can I ask me,
armored vehicles here? We own at least 3 or 4 armored vehicles. They call them Bearcats. They were bringing them to all the things. They're manned with basically what looks like SAS soldiers. They hang off it. They've all got weapons. Absolutely, utterly unnecessary to police Melbournians. You don't use them to police Melbournians. You use them to crush Melbournians. That's the only reason you have these vehicles, and they're here now.
Could I say, Mary, you're talking about 5,000 years of Chinese culture being a hard thing to change, which I understand. So the idea of a mandarin is a Chinese concept, isn't it? Like that piece fitting into the greater body of that fruit. But there's basically 100 years of freedom in Hong Kong, which the Hong Kong people, Hong Kong Chinese, took to really well. So it didn't take long for them to get a taste of something else to want to preserve it. So wouldn't that be something that we should really inculcate in the Chinese diaspora that are now Australian, living in Australia?
Yes, I feel like Australia, at least there's the feeling, or at least illusion, that we are slightly more free, because the political, I'm not an expert, but essentially the political situation between Hong Kong and China is different to here, right? So they were under a special administrative ruling, effectively, under PRC, so People's Republic of China. So whereas here in Australia, there is technically a constitution, there are acts that protect human rights. And yeah, I mean, it's really about actually using that and assessing things like the permanent pandemic bill against those very rigorous standards we've set for ourselves as a society. And how can we, if we make laws that contravene the basic human rights, then that's when I get worried. And I am currently very worried about what Australia will become in the future. And one thing I just wanted to raise was that, once again, I'm not anti anybody, because as a child, I grew up in like early 90s, right? So I was in China until I was 10, before I came to Australia. That was like an extremely peaceful time. It was after all the unrest has happened, and I grew up in, happiness and fulfillment. It was only after I moved to Australia that, and I started to learn more about history, and I went, oh wow, all this stuff happened, and what is the cost of that so-called peace that I enjoyed? It's probably laid on the lives of many people, millions of people. So so I think the question to Australians now is, there is a narrative of safety and security and keeping everybody together in safety. But what is the cost of that to you? So what is the cost of that to our mental health? What is the cost to ultimately our freedom as individuals and also as a community? So that is a question that we each have to answer. So,
Can I ask? Because I've had a lot to do with Grace in the marches, because I'm mad for Grace. She's but
look at Grace.
Mary, I know you said when you first got there, but what did it really feel like? Because when I did my first march, I have to admit, I was scared. The police were, you had a feeling that the police, it was the day they shot people in Flinders Street, and you were hanging around, you were with this small group. We were all nervous, and it didn't feel like Australia. I wasn't used to being scared of the police, and yet you felt it. And then when you finally got to this crowd and like this river, it was just like, oh my God, it was just wonderful. You know what I mean? It was like, refugees escaping tyranny. How did it feel like to you? How did you deal with overcome the fear of doing it, of getting there and being a part of it?
So pretty much in my head, I just said, F this, I'm just going to turn up and see what happens. I can always leave.
That's exactly Australian. It's colloquial Australian.
We taught you well.
F this, mate, I'm jumping in.
Fuck this, I'm going.
That's right. Fuck this. I'm just going to turn up. And then like, I don't know about you guys, but I actually had a moment where I got really emotional. Like we were all squashed together in the crowd, like near the beginning, like front of Parliament, where the speeches were happening. And then I just felt like so much coherence and community and love from everybody. And I just got really like tearful. So I was like, wow, this is what true unity feels like. It was one of the few times in my life where I felt it. So it was quite lovely.
Were you there when Markian played then?
I was.
Yeah. Amazing. Beautiful. That was an amazing day.
Is it perverse to think that maybe Daniel Andrews has done more for the cohesiveness of multicultural Australia than what he could have possibly hoped to do? Because here we are having a conversation that I would have never had the courage, or not even had the inclination or thought to have with either of you two, if it wasn't for the circumstances that are confronting us. So is there some perverse chance that he's really going to bring multicultural Australia together?
Grace?
Anyone?
I just use an example for Hong Kong. Okay, 1997. Before 1997, some of our wealthy people, they can go. They just leave Hong Kong, and after Hong Kong, they introduced quite a lot of Chinese men from mainland China. They live in there, and so the protest looks like a lot of people. But why the people start to complain? Because they are from mainland China. So the multicultural, why they want to bring the multicultural? Maybe just like we just want to come here, and compared to my own country, we feel the government, Australia government, is better than my country. They look after us, so they just comply. They just thinking we go out to protest. It's crazy. It's not listen to the government. It's we will carry around the virus everywhere, and media, Chinese media in Melbourne or in Australia, they already been infiltrated by Chinese CPP.
Hey, ours is no better.
Yeah, and they just say, because they already some of them is a 3AW. I think it's 3CW.
3AW radio station.
And then they call 3CW.
Oh, 3CW.
Yeah,
okay.
CW. And they is connect with the channel 9. And so everything Australian mainstream media say, they will say, and then they even to scare the people, say protest. All the people get a cover in a hospital. They come from the protest, come from a rally. So in the Chinese society, they just like, no, you don't go there. What that is not loyal for. That's not good. That's waste of time.
So Grace, it's basically follow the money. So it's even follow the money. And obviously at the moment, follow the money means follow the CCP, follow China, wherever that's going. That's where the cash is coming through, whatever it is. Yeah. You were telling us before about being a nurse, and you were talking about COVID in particular, and you were talking about some of the reactions that the nurses were having to it. Could you tell us about that?
Before you go there, Grace, I just want to finish that line. Do you think there's a lot of Chinese people who can't, because I've met a lot of people from Poland, South Africa, other places where they've had tyranny, and they can't believe it's happening. Do you think in the culture, they're like going, now something's going to happen, it can't be happening here? Do you think that where they say people are waking up, that's one of the issues, that they think somehow they'll just wake up and something will happen and it'll be gone, that they won't actually have to stand up and tackle it? Or they're just thinking that they're just adapting to the situation?
I want to share about it because I grew up in Taiwan. That time is 1990. Tiananmen Square is the 1989. I remember that time I just only childhood, year 6. I'm sorry, I just need to, because that day they was start to kill the people, and then all the school in Taiwan, they start to singing the song for the people in there. We can feel the pain because that's kind of whole Taiwanese, the community, the society was shocking. And that time we was go through a lot of protester. Taiwan have a few of a protester start from a small group of people. They find out the small group of like a 5 or 6, and then it slowly become 10 people. They go to the president, the office, outside the office, and they start to protest. And slowly the people was queuing up, and then become like thousands. The people was in there occupy. The outside of I think the outside the president, the office there for 32 days. And they turn the Taiwan become a democratic. They have to step back. They start to discuss what we're going to do, and then until 1991, they get rid of one of a very severe law. They can already been occupied Taiwan 63 years. And that law have to take it off. It's similar as state of emergency. Government can use any power to kill you. And we was living in that kind of the law long time. But because of a small group of students, university student, and then they caused the whole democratic movement start. But we pay a lot of price because quite a lot of people been beaten by the police and similar as what happened in Melbourne in that time. And after that, we have 1996. We start have we can vote in our own president. Until 2014, Sunflower is also a small group of people, 20 people. They occupy the parliament in Taiwan parliament. They occupy 23 days inside the parliament because that time the president want to sell the Taiwan to China, right. And we was scared. We was really scared because we thinking that's 20 years the democratic. We finally we earn it. We have freedom. That time we are going to lose. That time we are so scared because we know where to run. We just only way we can run. We just jump into the Pacific Island or the Pacific Ocean because we know where to run. Some people can run away to somewhere, but we only thing can do is come back and fight. And so they just fight, and then the police was torture, and then police was beating them. They said doesn't matter if a beating. We use they use the bugang, the gun to shut in or with water and whatever thing.
Water cannons.
They say okay,
water cannons.
Yeah. And then the student was there, so student and then all the citizen, everyone was there. Okay, fine. If like this, we start to organize how to prevent. So they have they start to have a structure, and then everything just want to against. After 23 days occupy, they walk out and peacefully finish. And this law this bill was been cancelled. But that time is kind of a winning for the citizen. But the pain in there is for Taiwanese people in that 20 years. That time we only can fight. We just go out the street. It doesn't matter. Because we know where to go.
Nothing to lose.
Otherwise, because we nothing, no way, nothing to lose.
The Tiananmen Square massacre actually gave birth to Taiwan.
Yeah, Taiwan, the democratic.
So the people that died in Tiananmen Square, actually
allowed
Taiwan to be free.
So that's real hope. That's a story of hope for us then, isn't it? Potentially, that
freedom. So a lot of Taiwanese people tell me, you just tell Australian, the democratic freedom is to have to fight for it. You
were fighting for something that you wanted, whereas we've got something that's been taken away from us. So it's a different strategic struggle in a way, isn't it? And the thing for China, particularly in 1989, it's a paranoid regime because the Soviet Union's just lost the Cold War. The Berlin Wall's come down. Communism's on the retreat. It looks like the West has won. The West's going to be triumphant. So there's a lot of paranoia in the Chinese culture at the time. So it's going to come in really hard on anyone trying to pull away from that. Is that something that you were aware of, Mary, when you were living there?
Once again, I think I came in at the tail end of that growing up. So I didn't I didn't feel the vibe of paranoia. But definitely I feel like, just talking about what happened here in Melbourne, all the videos, the crazy rubber bullets, and I know you guys were at the shrine as well. Definitely, I think that inspired me and made me, come to the protests. So like all of your sacrifices and all the pain that you suffered is not in vain. And you're right. All of the sacrifices does, inspire, even more people to rise to freedom.
When you were growing up, were you aware of Mao's Little Red Book? Because there was a Little Red Book, wasn't it, that all the Chinese people had to have, and had Chairman Mao's philosophy in it, etc. I don't know that you would have been aware of that, Grace, or that was not something you would have in Taiwan necessarily. But
I have one. Yeah. Somebody was given to me and said they stolen from the parents for me. Because that one cannot be loose. I said, okay, I got it. That one is like it's kind of Marxism. The order just translate direct from the communists, Marxism, the theory. And
manifesto,
so,
yeah.
So that kind of things always.
It's like Mao's version of
and then you have to take it out, and then the yelling and say it's just like crazy. It's pure crazy, but it was, but
well, it was an attack on the culture. It wasn't like, because Mao wanted to, that's the Cultural Revolution. He wanted to tackle the four olds. I can't remember what they were. You know, probably patriarchy, all the usual ones you get. You know, emancipate women, all the sort of stuff that you get around. Okay.
I think it's more important in political. It's you in my side or you in another side, and it's kind of a thing is like you have to be right political view, and if you're not,
I'm finished. I want a question for you. I have a question for you after you finish.
And this political view is what's happening in the Asian culture, and then in Vietnamese the culture as well. They all experience this one. They've been brainwashed from the very little, and then they say, oh our leader is save us.
Yes.
And then I was going to that one.
From Chiang Kai-shek.
We say that Chiang Kai-shek is the perfect man. Is the save us from the China, that CCP, and then they destroy us. And
but there was a civil war going on, wasn't there? And the Second World War sort of interrupted it. And Chiang Kai-shek was going well, looked like he was going to win, but then did the Japanese invade, and it sort of changed the shift of power to the communists.
So they run to Taiwan.
There was a big march, wasn't there? Mao Zedong did this famous massive. I don't know if it's true or propaganda, but to Grace, to Grace, can you tell us what you do? What was your job?
You mean
what's that? Unless you don't want to tell the one that you just lost. Your job.
I was nurse.
About the nursing,
The last month I was nurse.
Now, did you
this
work?
month I'm not nurse anymore.
Did you work in a hospital all the way through the pandemic?
Yes. I was walked through from the start from. I think that time was February. They start have a pandemic, and then we was work, and we nearly work as full time, and then start from no mask until have a mask. And then that time we are fine. We just doesn't feel like COVID is coming. Even the IPAD is the infection control department. They always say that one is coming. Sorry, I don't want to shut down the Facebook account. Say something.
You won't be the first.
You worked through it all.
Yeah.
Now you've lost your job. I found you at the protests and on the steps, and I just see you going around so active. You've got your little camera, you've got your little microphone, you're streaming. Then you approached me, you wanted to change some of my articles into Chinese and send them around. You're just a dynamo. So what they should have done is, by losing your job, basically crushed your spirit. But instead, you've blossomed. And then the same goes with Mary. When they shot at us at the shrine, the purpose of all that violence was to crush the Australian spirit. Instead, we've got Mary coming to a march. It's really interesting.
Born in Beijing. It wasn't meant to bring the...
Born in Beijing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's really... And they have a lot of Australians looking at going to the march. Oh, you bastard, you ugly people. Basically, they're saying, ugly. That's what... They can't see the beauty. And if they just come down, we've got another march this Saturday. Damien and I actually the MCs of that one. And they're coming down, and it's... we'll plug in now. We've got the Cossack coming down.
Oh, very cool.
Yep, so it's
Craig Kelly's going to speak again too. So
Doug come on down, and so it should be really fun. But it's where was I going? But it's beautiful in the march, like you were saying, Mary. How you teared up. There's a great beauty to it. Everyone's coming together. I look around and I see the whole palette of the Australian community there in different degrees. I mean, I know Damien says he hasn't seen many Indians. I have seen some. I haven't seen a score, but I have seen some. I've seen every culture. One of the most beautiful things I saw was when I was walking down, there was a young Asian woman standing there on the side. This is when we were walking back, and it's still a big crowd. And she had a nice mask on. It was all diamantes, and and I went like this. I just looked at her and I said, "Pull it off." And she did. And then she came up and she joined me, and we marched for about 10 or 15 minutes together. I wish I knew her name. I'd get her on. And it was just lovely. And now
hopefully your courage too does that.
They're doing it now.
Hopefully your courage inspires more of the Chinese diaspora and to come out. Yeah, I really do too. That's what it's about. It's about defending.
And Grace as well. And even here, I have
the reason why people want to come to this country.
When I put up that we were going to have a talk to the Asian community about the protests, there were people going, "Oh, you're racist. Oh, you're going racist now." Literally saying you cannot have this sort of conversation. And yet here it is, and it's beautiful. Yeah, I really applaud you, Mary, for coming forward. I really do.
Well, there's something universal about the human spirit, like you're saying, that now it needs to be defended. And it needs to be defended by all portions of the Australian community, because if it's not, too, it'll just be painted as some neo-right-wing white supremacist movement, and it'll fail. But it'll fail for all of us. We'll all suffer the consequences as a result. So really, we have to unite with common purpose, whatever differences there may be. And of course there is. There's a struggle with any culture, but now we're really fighting for our fundamental freedoms. The reason why people would want to come to this country in the first place. Otherwise, I'm talking to people that want to go back to the communist country they escaped from.
Yeah,
they want to go back.
They want to go back to Poland. They want to go back to they want to go back to these countries. They say it's better there. Yeah. It's extraordinary.
I just mentioned one thing. When I have done, I've been kicking out from my job, and when I'm on the street, I just say, okay, I'm going down the street. I go for the protester because I find it's not right. And then we just need to speak out. Doesn't matter. That time I was in the only Asian face in here, in that state, and it's only myself with my dog. And then I was so scared to go there. That time is the 27th of March. I just go with my dog, and then I say, that early, and that time, I start from that day, and then I go every day until today. I'll find out say we have to have Asian people stand up. That's matter. And that time, I just only one word. I have nothing to lose. I just come in to fight for our freedom. That's it. I can't run anyway. I cannot go back to Taiwan. I can't go any other state. I want to stay here, fighting with the Melbournian. That's it, done. And that time we just okay, just do it. And whatever we do it, and once you start to do it, you start to know the other Asian people was approach you, and then they asking what's going on, and you just like a obligation start. You want to do something to connect each other, to unite human races.
I love the Japanese came down the other day with their drums. They have those long, thin drums. Banging down. And then you have other cultures coming in. We had the didgeridoo playing, and you got drums from Eastern Europe, and they're all coming together. Damien's right. Dan is like wanting to crush us, and he probably still will get this. Who knows if we get this bill through? But he's creating this great unity and beauty, and can it be stopped? You know what I mean? The crowds are enormous. I mean,
common purpose.
We had a spoke today with Damien. People were scoffing at Damien, saying, they're not those numbers. The numbers were enormous in the march. The last march was, and the one before, both of them enormous. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. It's just huge. And it's an
before we run out of time, too, Michael, just before we run out of time, could I just shift focus just a little bit onto the COVID narrative? Because it was great talking to Grace before, and Mary, I'm sure you have an opinion on it as well. But I was talking to you, Grace, before we came to air, and you were talking about like some of your nurse colleagues, you obviously don't mention them, we don't want to get into trouble, they clearly need to keep their jobs, and their relationship to the whole COVID narrative?
Yeah, recently, they have to wear the PPE and then wear a N95 mask, and then all the patient and nurses, they all have a second dose, 2 doses, and the hospital was forced them to have a booster dose, but they still have a cover around, and they get all the staff, and then the patient was take a turn to get a COVID, and yeah, and after that, they have to prevent each other, just like they see each other, scare each other. They even don't want to talk to each other because they are too scared. They will be tested. If they've been tested and then they get a positive, then they have to stay home, and then they will lose their job. They lose the income. So they just like go there and to like isolate themselves, even they already get that one. And so
even if they don't believe it, because we're already living in a version of China.
No, they don't believe it. They don't believe it. And then they told me they don't have a choice, but they don't believe anything the government tell them. But they have to do it. But it's like people, I just tell them, say, actually we are on that one, we say that one, and then we are the happiest the people around the world, because they receive that one, they get a kind of a freedom, but they are worried themselves. They put them into another prison war because they too scared they will get another one, get another positive. And sometimes when some of the nurses even have to go for test 6 times a week, because always someone been positive, and then they working with that shift. It's crazy. I know it's crazy. I'm very lucky. I've been thrown out from the hospital.
What about you, Mary?
Know that the comments are glowing for you guys. There's a couple of guys wanting to know if Mary's single. Same with you, Grace. There's and
what about me? Does anyone know if I'm single?
What beautiful age? Not yet.
I'm single. I'm single.
Doing the show
You
for 2
told me
months.
that, man.
Nothing.
Once we get 80 shows, maybe.
Mary turns up.
Thanks, guys. You guys are providing a
Thank
dating
you.
service.
Yeah. No, Mary, tell me what's your relationship to the COVID narrative? Like, in your words, what do you think about it?
Well,
I got the goat ready.
at first I actually listened to it as in I believed it, and then I guess as time passed, I just started asking questions, and the answers all came back a bit weird. So I think, unfortunately, I haven't received any decent answer from the government or the science that confirms that this thing actually is dangerous and that we all need to be protected, and we need to do whatever the government says in order to protect everybody. So I don't buy into that narrative. And I would encourage everybody just to ask some critically, based questions. Who, as you said, like, is there a money trail? Like, where is it going? Who is actually benefiting from this narrative? The more you dig, the answers may surprise you. And I understand that a lot of people just want to get on with their lives and for things to get back to normal. But once again, what is your cost for getting back to normal? And then I thought how today at the Parliament House, they kept moving those barricades down. And before you have the whole steps to protests, and then the more that they move the barricade down, the less space you have, and then people get on the street because there's no space left to protest. And I feel like that's what's happening with this whole narrative. It's like, let's take away one of your freedoms, see how you react. Okay, no protest. Okay, we'll take away 2, and then 3, and eventually by conceding and just acquiescing to all of these removal of freedom, suddenly you wake up one day and you're like, oh wow, like I now live in a prison. Wow. So I just really
you moved back to Beijing.
Well, exactly. Well, that's right. Like I'm in another communist country, so I really hope that's not what happens to Australia. And also, I actually wrote a poem yesterday. Like as I was watching the debate, I don't know if I can maybe quickly read it out.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Sure, why not?
Yes, thank you. Because the debates really, I think there was a pain in me that made me write this. And the poem is called "Where is Your Line in the Sand?" Where is your line in the sand? Is it when people are labeled by status instead of their name? Is it when people are shot and shoved like a video game? Is it when the children start to cry out in pain and fear, while those who are meant to serve reap gain and sneer? Is it when all that you hold dear in the world finally disappears? Where is your line in the sand? When will you take your last stand? That's it.
Excellent.
Send that to me. I'll post it. I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
And I have to say, this is one of the most important announcements in the show. Angus Collins, I've been wondering for ages if you're single, Damien. Yes, he is. He is. And he needs boosters. Bring medication, get him fired up. We need him fired up. We need him to be the same colour as the flag behind it.
Agnes, you want to come on the show tomorrow, mate? The only reason I'm doing this, no. Girls, that's been fantastic. Like, that is a call to arms to all of the Australian community, to the Australian community at large, not just the Chinese community or whatever community. It's a call to arms to the Australian community. Our freedom is being taken away from us. Unless we fight for it and we realise that no one's coming to save us, there's no shining silver armours coming, there's no army from some other country that's coming to come and save it. We have to do it ourselves. And we can do it ourselves. Whether you've had 2 jabs or booster, no jab, it doesn't matter. This is your freedom. This is your freedom, because we're moving into a territory that I think will even put the CCP to shame, because I think they've got something even more in store than just that totalitarian regime.
Look in the mirror, cavalry is you. I have to say, this has been possibly my favourite show. I really love it. Grace, you are going to take out the show. Whatever you want to say, you say it, baby. I'm going to go out with you, and then I'm going to show some video of Hong Kong just to show the numbers in Hong Kong of the people who fought for freedom. All yours, Grace.
Oh, doesn't matter that this bill is passed or not, but I want to encourage everybody. This protest is never end, because it's our freedom. This one just only beginning. We have to earn our life back, and we have to earn our future. Because this one we cannot lose. We cannot lose, but just be patient, and then we have to work together. Yeah, I just want to say to everybody, we have to unite, because they cannot destroy us. They cannot destroy us. Yeah, hold the line.
Good on you.
I love you both. Okay, here we go. Stay in the studio, ladies. We'll talk afterwards. Everybody, this is from the Hong Kong protests. When they were trying to protest against, what was that bill? Grace, you said
national security law. Hong Kong.
This is when the Hong Kong raised up. This is some drone footage. Good night, everybody.
政府咧，我哋係呼籲咧，係佔據馬路嘅市民咧，盡快咧係返回行人路，使到交通咧可以盡早恢復正常嘅。我亦都喺呢度呼籲咧，聚集嘅市民咧保持冷靜克制，盡早咧係和平散去咧，係唔好以身試法。
I'm just going to bring Damien back on saying, so it's been official today. Damien and I are going to MC the speakers at this thing. We're keeping them short, 5 minutes each.
Yep. Only 6 speakers, 5 minutes each. Maybe one gets 7.
Get off. Cossack will maybe get 7. We've got one of the singers who's always at the protest, Ivan, is going to come on and sing, and we might get some other musos before then. But what we're going to do is going to ask you when you come in the park, because you do an action. You do an action to come to the march. You've created your sign, it's an action. You march, it's an action. Once you're in the park, we want the action to continue. And what we want you to do is mingle and get to know each other, because we have to unite. And the way we're going to unite is not to just sit there and listen to a speaker, is actually to mingle, introduce yourselves, and grow a community. Because I know a lot of us have lost friends, but you can make family in this movement.
And we're meeting at the steps. We're meeting at the steps as usual. And then we're walking around to Treasury Gardens. That's where we're hearing the speeches. And then we're going on a very special march to a particular place, which we will reveal on the day. And it's going to be great. It's going to be different than anything we have done so far. So hang in there, because it's going to be,
regardless of the bill, let's show Victoria, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and the world what we want. And what we want is freedom, as these beautiful women have shown us. We have to fight, come down, and we're going to make it work.
We're on the side of truth and justice, aren't we, Michael? We're on the side of truth and justice. They're the words that we want to hear more of and talk about more. Truth and justice.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's going to be great fun. Come down. Make your sign. Start making your sign. Well, I'm actually thinking of having a competition for the best sign.
Yep.
So the best sign. And the vaccinate sperm one can't win because he's already gone global. Yep. So you've got to beat that one. That's the one.
Big photo of me, the next dictator of
new Bitcoin. So you've got to beat that one. See you soon. See you tomorrow. Take care.
Thanks,
bye.
Mate. Cheers.